Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Dr. Tom Roselle, and many of you have been waiting for this presentation now patiently for about, what's it been, about a week, 10 days? Anyway, we have a very, very interesting and timely, how to do, if you will, about how to get that COVID-19 pounds off your butt end that you've been sitting around for, quite a while now. And we're going to talk about two different pieces of the puzzle. We're going to talk about the Eastern application through acupuncture, and we're going to talk about the Western and Eastern application of nutrition and putting them all together so you can optimize and maximize, weight loss, getting those pounds, those lbs off your derriere because you've been sitting around petrified to go outside and haven't been doing much of anything. But you know what? To help me do that and to make it much more palatable for you, there's none other than, if you will, my boss, Sue Roselle. Hi, Sue. Let's get started on this. This is going to be fun.
Okay, ready to go.
Good. So when we're talking about acupuncture, when we're talking about nutrition, a lot of people are going to say, what? How do they have anything to do with each other? But the truth of it is that they're really hand in glove when it comes to optimizing and maintaining weight. And you've been at this for a lot of years. You've worked with Overeaters Anonymous. You've actually written a booklet for them, or an introductory to a booklet. And so you've seen this from multi-dimensional perspectives. But we want to tie this together for all of the folks that are listening and want to have a little bit of how do I do this and maintain it? And what I want people to understand is this is lifestyle. This really doesn't have anything to do with take this pill, call me in the morning, and let's see what happens, or let's watch it. It's about what do I do for the rest of my life to optimize who I am, how I feel, and keeping myself at a certain weight. The problem with the word diet, if you will, is the first three letters. It's to die. And tell people that they can't do certain things, and they say, oh my God, I can't do this. And you tell them you have to stay away from, you can't touch this. Those are all negative patterns. What I want people to realize is that they're in the driver's seat. They have the opportunity to move forward. So, this fits some people, not everybody. Let's say that, a guy wants to weigh 185 pounds and he wants to be about 12 to 13% body fat. So at the end of the deal is how does he achieve that, number one? But more importantly, what is somebody who weighs that? How do they maintain it optimally the rest of their life? What is it that they're looking forward to moving towards getting done in that application? So, Sue, you see that all the time. Why is it so difficult for people to keep weight off?
Well, there's so many different reasons and so many different variables. I think we have to kind of go back to some very basic things about how the body is. And we got to remember we're running around with genes that were formed 500,000 years ago in a lifestyle that is so completely away from the way we live now. But nevertheless, those genes haven't changed. So what was appropriate and allowed people to survive during the environment that they lived in is totally backwards with what we have in our environment. You take that and you add into the mix all of the different things that we are now exposed to that human beings were never designed to be exposed to. All of the radiations, the chemicals that we breathe in, that we have in our water, things added to our food to make them taste better that aren't real foods. All these things play a role in messing with those same genetics. And we still have that same survival mechanism built in where if the body thinks it is starving, it thinks there's a famine. And it is going to slow everything down because it's afraid you'll starve to death. Well, we know, at least in this country, for the most part, we're not having a famine. But yet, our bodies don't know that.
Well, here's the situation, and what's really important. We go into stress overload, and we're going to talk about how cortisol and things affect the body and what the situation is. But people are way too fat. It's like 1 out of 4 people in this country are deemed to be overweight. That's not okay. That's crazy.
No.
And when you have a society that's too fat, everything else goes with it. Heart disease and diabetes and cancers and so forth. That's the end prodromal, if you will.
And if you actually take a look at when we started to see this huge increase in weight, which is somewhere in the late 1950s to the 1960s, and really took off by the 1970s, you have to stop and think, okay, what are we doing differently in these decades that were not being done in the 30s, 40s, and 50s? I mean, we're still Americans, still in the same country, still having access pretty much to the same foods. But what happens during that period of time is they started doing some pretty massive experiments with our food supply. Hydrogenated fats, okay, Crisco and margarine became a key word in families in place of butter, all right? And so we already know the devastation that trans fats do to the body.
Well, fat got a bad name at one point.
Yeah. They started homogenizing milk. Milk never used to be all one form. If you got milk, the cream was at the top, you poured that off, and what was underneath was the milk. When they started homogenizing it, then those little fat globules of cream started getting into the body a whole lot faster than what they used to be. So then they started skimming the milk down, but it didn't taste very good, so they added more sugar to make it taste better. And then we got into the whole thing where fat was awful for people. Fat was what was going to cause us to die of heart attacks. That was what was making us fat. So they took the fat out, and what did they do to replace it? Because there's no flavor in the food without the fat. They put sugar and carbohydrates in.
Well, that goes back into the day, you and I have discussed it, and we've presented in lectures before where, 250 years ago when this country first came about, the average consumption of sugar on an annual basis per person was something in the neighborhood of about 16, 17 pounds.
Not even 5.
So roll the clock forward 250 years later, we're talking about 160 to 170 pounds of sugar annually per person. It's like, oh my God, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And all you have to do is take a look at ingredient lists, and you'll see 5 different names for sugars on there. And they do that on purpose because then it doesn't have the second ingredient or the first ingredient being sugar. So if they have 5 different names, they can do it in descending order, and it doesn't look like there's so much sugar in the food.
There's so many different ways of determining what the body should weigh. And you go into a traditional physician's office and they got these charts up, and, it says, if you're this height and this weight, you have to weigh so much, right? Well, I've been, if I had to go with those charts, I've been overweight since I was born. But
exactly.
But at the end of the day, when I was playing ball in college, my body fat was 9%, but I weighed 225 pounds. Over the years, I've lost that weight and I've maintained, body fat levels. But explain the differences between, using different calculators, if you will, to tell someone that they're too fat, too light, too this or too that.
Okay, well, the BMI is based on your height and weight on a formula that they lock in, and then they give you a chart and you sort of fit into it. And like you said, it works for the average Joe or Jolene. It does not work for very, very muscular people. In fact, if you remember, whenever we were doing insurance exams for you, we had to take your neck measurement to your chest measurement to your waist measurement before they would believe that you were not an obese person. Yep. And actually, that is one of the best ways of doing it. Also, the ratio of waist to hip makes a huge, good, valuable way of determining whether a person has the right amount of weight on their bodies. We in the office will use an electronic unit. It's not super, super complicated. They have a lot more complicated ones in a lot of the gyms and fat, dietary centers and things like that. But ours gives us at least a general idea of percentage of body fat, because it's really not what your total weight is. All right. You can take a 250-pound man who's at 12% body fat and put him up against a 250-pound man who's at 25% body fat. And there's a huge difference in the way they look. Okay. Because fat weighs more, but takes up less space. And fat is an inert substance. It's causing troubles in our bodies, whereas muscle is an active tissue, and that doesn't cause trouble. It actually keeps us well.
Well,
Ideally,
the more muscle you have, the more metabolic rate that you have.
exactly.
And it's burning better, and it's producing a much higher level of, if you will, immune function throughout the entire body.
Exactly. And when people talk about what their basal metabolic rate is, that is basically an estimate of how much calorie burn they get based on the amount of lean muscle tissue they have in their bodies. And obviously, the more muscle you have, the higher your metabolic rate is. That means you can eat more and stay slim.
It's like all these teenage kids that we see coming around the house that are say, "How can you eat that much?" And they're as slim as they possibly can. But there's other reasons for that. Let's talk a little bit about the things that we have to look at. We have a slide in front of us right now that says weight loss variables.
Right.
And those are the things that really, truly make a difference. You made a comment a little while ago that weight loss has to do with genetics in many situations. It has to do with environmental situations. It has to do with food consumption. It has to do with stress levels. All of those things are individualistic, and we need to be able to understand them so we can, actually put together a program, if you will, that is very specific for the person in front of us. So let's talk about these things a little bit and really what the applications are and why they're sitting there in front of us.
Well, I'm going to be Captain Obvious here for a minute and say, if anybody's looking at this thing and they can, in their good conscience, say, oh, weight loss is a matter of eating less and moving more, they're not getting the picture. The whole point to take away from this particular slide is the fact that weight loss is an extremely difficult thing. And we are genetically geared to not lose our fat. That means survival in our body's genetics. And so we have multiple reasons why we have a very difficult time getting weight down, particularly as we get older. If you took just the most important ideas off this particular slide, first and foremost is blood sugar balance and insulin stability. All right. Insulin is designed to put fat away in your tissue. It's to use it up what you need for exercise and activity, and anything that's left over is to go into fat. That is survival for our body, and that's what is very difficult to break through. Thyroid plays a huge role because that's one of our metabolizing members of our endocrine system that uses and gives some of the communication to the body as to how to use the various nutrients and calories that we've taken in. So thyroid function is extremely important. Medications get to be a real problem because so many medications have a side effect of weight gain. And it ranges.
A lot of them are holding fluids, increasing cortisol levels. They're dumbing down other hormones so your body can't get rid of it. It lowers metabolic rate.
It does in many cases. Food sensitivities puts you into a crisis mode along with stress levels. Okay, well, why does crisis mode have a problem? Well, we're talking about cortisol and adrenaline. One of the things that cortisol and adrenaline do is increase your risk of being able to put fat on 4 times greater than you would if you were calmed down and not under stress. And if you were not eating food you're not allergic to. That also can lead into the dysbiosis. You eat foods that don't agree with you, foods you're allergic to, you're going to have bad bugs in your belly. Bad bugs alter our metabolism. We're beginning to understand more and more about how that works.
Well, here's a situation that matter of fact, as recently as this week, I told a patient that, they said, I've been following everything and I've been doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm eating less. My calorie count is low. And I said, let me take a look at that dietary history. And I'm seeing all kinds of carbohydrates and a little bit of fruit and so forth in there. Exactly. And they truly were not eating a lot of different, or heavier amounts of calories or foods. But I said, look, here's the deal. You're trying to get rid of fat. You're trying to slim down and get your waistline back. And, I'm playing with this person. And I said, but what you're showing me is you're eating sugars and you're eating foods that convert into sugars very rapidly. And here's what your body's doing. I said, metaphorically, your body is going to use the first available source of energy. And that's the stuff you're putting in your mouth. So it's not going to burn off the stuff you've got stored around your waistline. You have to deprive it in a way. One of the things we'll talk about a little bit more later on, but let's talk about meal timing and portions a little bit. Everybody's into this intermittent fasting thing.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
So we've got that going on. And for some people, it works really well. And for some people, they jump in it too quickly and they actually crash. They go the other way.
Yeah. Well, and again, the intermittent fasting, like everything else that gets to be a fad around here for dietary patterns and how it's going to be the magic bullet for everybody, that's great for people who are very, very healthy and well and just really want to do things differently, want to clean up their act and that sort of thing. And most people have no trouble doing a 10 or 12-hour fast. You finish eating at 10 o'clock at night, you eat your first meal at 8 o'clock in the morning. Not a big deal. Even finishing 8 o'clock at night, eating the first meal at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's a 12-hour intermittent fast. That really doesn't put a lot of stress on the body. But the problem we get into when people want to go into more drastic versions, if they are under stress with emotions for whatever, okay, COVID-19 alone would be enough to be a problem. But also the things that come along, if your job is at risk, if you can't pay your bills, if your children are at home and they're not learning, a lot of different stressors that will affect you. If you're healing from an illness, an injury, or surgery, or you're having a terrible time with allergies, where your body is already stressing out and trying to do things for you, and you suddenly aren't feeding it during the waking hours of your day, you're adding an additional stress to that, which the body can't handle. So you're doing yourself a very grave disservice at that point. And it's something that needs to be moved into very gently. Again, if you take a look at medications that you're taking, there are some people on medicines who cannot do it because they have to have food in order for the medications to work properly.
And unfortunately, if they ignore that, they're in trouble because they can cause a cascade for the same thing they're trying to eliminate. You know, there's one thing that people need to understand is that the body neurologically recognizes something that tastes sweet, even if it's a low-calorie or artificial sweetener, as something that is sugar, and it reacts the same way. It stimulates all of the blood sugar handling elements. It stimulates insulin. It starts stealing zinc and chromium and so forth for stores because it thinks it has to metabolize it out. So you see the testing that says, well, it has a lower glycemic index, meaning the body handles it easier into the cell membrane, but we're far more than just handling it in the cell membrane. The body has to react to it. And unfortunately, if it tastes sweet, the body thinks it's sweet and it can't take the fat off, and it doesn't do anything about the metabolic patterns that have to assist it.
Well, and that goes back to what I just said earlier with insulin. Insulin's job is to take any excess calorie of sugar and store it as fat. And even if you don't have a food with sugar in it, you have glucose circulating in your body. That insulin will take that glucose that is already circulating in your bloodstream meant for energy and break it down and store it in fat in the liver and change it into triglycerides and put it around the belly. So this is how people who drink like a lot of diet sodas and eat a lot of artificially sweetened protein energy bars and all this sort of thing actually start gaining weight around their midsection. And this was a big snafu that came out about 10 or 15 years ago, I think, when they started really investigating the effects of people drinking 5 and 6, drinks of artificial sweetened substances a day.
You know, the other thing, conversely, we've talked to some people over this crazy time that we've been part of over the last few months, and they said, wow, I've actually taken some weight off. I said, why, you've been outside? Oh, yeah, I walk every day. Gee, go figure. We've talked about, if you walk 2 miles every day, you decrease your risk of dying of a disease process, if you will, by 50%. And that's actual data. But, when we look at people being overweight and people, getting too large and they can't seem to get it off, there's risk factors that we've talked about with our patients as well. And, there's different diseases that go along with it. And, we've talked about the skinny fat person.
Right.
And that's one that we really need to discuss because that's important. You get somebody that, they look skinny on the outside, but they have diabetes, they have heart disease, they're going through all kinds of problems, their joint spaces are breaking down. That's the person we're talking about. What's the deal with that?
Well, and again, this is one of the reasons why the BMI doesn't work so well, the formula, because they look like they're fine, all right, by the formula. But when you actually do a breakdown and find that, in fact, they don't have a lot of muscle mass, and the majority of their shape is coming from a fatty substance, now they have the same inflammatory markers that a person who is overweight would be having, because they just have too much body fat for the ratio of the muscle mass that they have. And so they are, as you will, I guess, the hidden diabetic, all right, are the ones that doesn't explain why they're having this problem. But they are going to suffer the same types of situations. And again, even though they aren't showing that they're overweight, whatever dietary patterns they're following are the same ones that would allow somebody to gain the weight.
On the screen that we're looking at right now, there's a lot of different pieces, but the one I want to touch on, because you do a lot with hormonal patterns, for both men and women,
right,
and gynecological and sexual dysfunction problems, and we're talking about irregular periods, lousy premenopause and menopause patterns for guys. By the way, it's andropause for you. You go through the same stuff, and erectile dysfunction, it's not working the way it's supposed to. The one thing that you need to know about being too heavy or having a disproportionate amount of fat is that hormones aren't going to work, because it's not only blocking the capacity by forming an inflammatory wall against receptors in your body that allow these things to work, but it stores hormone within the fat tissue, so it makes it unavailable to work.
That's right. And if men have an excess amount of estrogens. Estrogen is a hormone that will store fat. That's what it's supposed to do. Because again, Mother Nature included high levels of estrogen in women to increase the fat, to one, keep them warm and allow them to nurture their infants as well as create milk. Well, it still keeps fat going if you've got an balance with your other hormones. In men, extra estrogens obviously is going to affect their ability to produce and utilize their testosterone, and they're going to have the same issues as well.
Well, the problem with that also in today's world is that we're seeing so much free environmental estrogens that we're seeing cancer rates go through the ceiling, both in women and men. Prostate tissue and breast tissue are genetically the same, and so they're both susceptible to estrogenics. And men, years ago, it was almost unheard of for a man to come up with breast cancer. Now, depending on the author that you read, it can be anywhere from 3 to 5% of all breast cancers are male.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually even the television commercials are now for the breast cancer medications for men.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe that when I heard it the other day.
Oh, I know. You start seeing things. But, as we're going through this whole situation is very preventable. It's very manageable. It's something that people don't have to live this way.
No. They
can begin to move things forward. It can be controlled. So
exactly.
There's guidance. Again, going back when I introduced that you were on the program with me today, I said that you spent a lot of time working with behavior modification with Overeaters Anonymous.
Sure.
And those are, that comes down to lots of things, from stress control and, working a plan and staying with the plan, and not, there's also metabolic situations. But how would you walk somebody through? Somebody said, listen, I want to be, and again, my whole thing is, it's not about losing 20 pounds. It's not about losing 40 pounds, because once you've lost it, then what? What's the deal? So how do you
keep it there?
How do you bring somebody into that, this is where I want to be. This is the lifestyle. This is what we do about it. And I want you to continue to tweak and move forward and make better.
Well, one of the first things to realize is that food is emotional. It's probably one of the most emotional aspects of our beings. And everything is connected to food, whether it's a celebration, it's a reward, it's a make me feel better, it's deal with my stress, whatever it is, it's always really relating to foods. You don't hear people say, oh, I'm so super stressed, I just have to get out and walk. That would be nice, but it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, we sit, meditate, or pray, right?
Exactly. One of the things you have to do is explain to some degree, you don't have to get into heavy biochemistry, but to some degree explain the differences between types of food so people really understand, because we don't know. Most people's education about their diet comes from the commercials on television, and that doesn't really give them much, or from, People magazine or wherever. People don't realize that foods work differently in different bodies. People don't realize that everybody has a different body and it doesn't work the same as their next door neighbor. So maybe Charlie down the street lost 20 pounds doing the keto diet. Well, Mary gained 14 pounds trying to do the same thing because it didn't work for her metabolism. So the key here is to figure out what it is that will work for them specifically. Also, to deal with their emotions. Why are you eating? And why are you eating the foods that you're eating? Is it because you don't know better? Is it because that's the only thing that's available to you? It's because that's what you've chosen because it's convenient, whatever it is. And try to come up with ways that will work a little bit better for their health, that will still fit in, excuse me, to their basic daily living. Some people like to weigh themselves every day. That helps them keep tabs on things. Other people, it makes them crazy to do it. It makes them just absolutely go ballistic if their weight fluctuates by even a half pound, going the wrong way. So some people can't weigh daily. Some people find it's easier to keep track of what they're eating if they do a food log. And it really is a big tool for me, because then I can really see where there's some glitches. Someone says, oh, I'm doing a good job, I'm following my plan. But when I get a food log, I say, yeah, well, you're following your plan, 4 days out of this week. But what happened to the protein? Or where did the vegetables go? Or why are you having so much fruit? Because we don't remember. Most people can't remember what they had for breakfast 2 days ago, much less what they ate.
Absolutely.
So, that helps me know where the problems are. And it's not that people are trying to cheat. That is not the case. I would have to say that 99.9% of the time, people legitimately are trying very hard to do what they think is the right thing. But it's a very hard thing to do, to change your eating patterns.
It is. It's a challenge. It's very difficult because so much of it, as you said, is emotionally linked. Your mother gave you whatever it was when you were a good little girl or boy, and you look forward to this at the holiday time. You do this at this time, and it has all of these good anchors, if you will, that have to do. But at the end of the day, particularly as society has moved forward and the adulteration of the foods, we're looking at, hamburgers and French fries and things of that nature.
Yeah.
We talked about all the sugar, but I came up with a mantra some years ago that basically said, avoid sugar, sodas, coffee, black teas, fast food, fried foods, alcohol, gluten, additives, preservatives, GMO foods, and so forth. And those are all things that alter metabolic pathways in the body, cause inflammation, doesn't allow your body to work optimally. And people say, oh my God, you just took away everything that I eat.
Exactly.
That's the problem. We're not eating good, solid foods. I eat a lot of food during the day, but it's all decent food. I do a little bit of intermittent fasting. It's usually about 12 hours. And, I get up, I get going. And by the way, I want to back on that just for a second. If you do a 12-hour fast and you do it properly and you avoid eating early in the morning, you're supporting the body's function, because in Chinese medicine, the energetic platforms get high at certain times. Means the liver gets high, the colon gets high, gallbladder gets high, and so forth. So the good thing is that during those organ systems that eliminate toxin and debris, you stay away from foods that will irritate them. And you do light things if you're going to do anything at all. Then you go into a normal eating pattern. But that's basically starting at about 11 o'clock at night and going till about 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning. You keep those areas clean with the exception of some water and some lemon and things of that nature, and then go into a good supportive dietary pattern, you're good to go. And just doing that makes a heck of a difference.
It does. It does. And the one screen, the slide we have up right now, the one little codicil I want to put on here is it does have eggs and nuts listed as an inflammatory group of foods. Eggs only if it happens to be something you're allergic to. Otherwise, it's a good food. including the yolk, by the way. The yolk is valuable.
It's like necessary?
Pardon me?
It's necessary?
Yes. It's one of the few places you can get choline from, which is a very important supportive nutrient for both brain and digestive function. And the other one is nuts. Nuts are one of the top allergy foods. So again, if you have an allergic reaction to nuts, and these are not peanuts, those are listed separately, but nuts, almonds, walnuts, pecans, hazelnuts, macadamia nuts, when they're raw, unsalted, those are actually very beneficial and can be very useful in helping to maintain satiety and give you really good nutrient base as well, as long as you're not allergic to them. But as soon as you roast them and you put flavorings and stuff on them to make them more like a, quote, treat, now you've got addiction started with them.
Yes. So the other thing that you got to look at is that with a lot of these foods, even on the surface, if they're not bad, including eggs, what you have to be careful with is the egg is a byproduct of the chicken that it came from. Yeah. And if they put things into the chicken, the egg is going to happen. It's like a child is going to be the byproduct of the mother. So you always want to err whenever possible to organic, free-range, grass-fed products that have not been adulterated and don't have the vegetable oils on them and so forth. Then you've got something that's decent. Peanuts happen to be one of the most allergic foods across the board simply because they're a rhizoid. They're a fungus. They grow in the ground. They don't grow on the tree. They're not really a nut. And
no, they're actually a bean.
Yeah. Well.
And just going back a little bit to when you were talking about Eastern medicine, the high energetics for foods during the daytime is at lunchtime. So all those people that are skipping breakfast and then skipping lunch and having this humongous meal at nighttime are working against the energetics of their body.
Yeah, it's important, to understand what happens in our body when we're doing these things. We started the program out talking about sugar and how pervasive it is in everything that we eat today. It's everywhere, if you will. And because, Fifth Avenue marketing knows that sugar is addictive. And whether it's your hamburger buns or your sodas or, your sweet-like substances and so forth, but sugar is a disaster. It causes cancers. It causes heart disease. It increases fat metabolism in the wrong direction. So, we're talking about something that if you want to fix virtually everything in your body that could go wrong, including cancers, you've got to eliminate this culprit called sugar and get it down to an occasional, like it was years ago, at 12 to 14 pounds, 16 pounds, 17 pounds per person annually instead of the 170 pounds. And I always look at it this way when I give that lecture, is that I don't get much sugar at all during the year. I mean, very little. You could probably put it in a 5-pound sack. Who gets my half?
Well, and you mentioned the eating disorder groups. I would say no matter what group you're looking at, it's a universal that no sugar, because sugar is actually a drug and it affects the brain the same way as heroin and cocaine and nicotine do. It is as difficult, if not more so, to break the habit of sugar, and it is a drug and it works just like any of the drugs.
Yeah, it's the same receptor sites in the brain. One of the tests that they do to determine cancer is called a PET scan. Yeah. And what that is they inject radioisotope sugar into the body so they can see where it goes. Cancer cells love sugar. So they see these cancer cells light up like crazy and say, oh, there's the culprit. So why do they use the sugar? Just as I said, cancer loves it. So if you want to get rid of cancer, if you want to get rid of degenerative disease, if you want to get rid of any degradation of immunological suppression, you got to get rid of the sugar.
And that's why I love it when I hear people come back and tell me that their medical personnel have told them that it doesn't matter if they eat sugar, it doesn't have any more effect on cancer than not. Well, if that were the case, why are they using a PET scan?
Exactly.
That's a disconnect for me.
The dietary patterns that we see in this country are awful. And the sad diet, and it's really is sad. It's what we eat in this world. My family, as many people who are watching this have heard me say on the radio, came from Sicily. I'm first generation to this country, and those folks there didn't have the conditions and the problems that when they immigrated to this country, they ended up having here. They didn't have the diabetes at the high levels. They didn't have the heart disease. They didn't have the bone loss and so forth because they grew their own food. It wasn't adulterated. They ate well balanced. If they had a little bit of meat, it was a small piece of lamb or was some fish or so forth. The rest of it was vegetables and grains that had not been adulterated. But unfortunately, what we see here is things that are loaded with sugars and salt to bring out the flavor. And now we've got cardiovascular disease, and we don't have the vitamins and nutrients. Our soils are depleted. So it comes back to, what's a person to do?
Well, and again, the connection with the SAD diet or the Great American Diet is the fact that the body really isn't as sensitive to the calories unless they're significantly reduced, significantly below what you need minimally. What it is sensitive to is the nutrient base of the calories you take in. So if you're taking in 2,000 calories full of sodium preservatives, fast-acting carbohydrates, low-quality nutrients, devoid of vitamins and minerals and fiber, you're going to be hungry. And when you're hungry, you're going to eat. And because those chemicals are addictive, you're going to go right back into those very same foods. Whereas you take 2,000 calories of a diet that is high in vegetables and lean proteins and good quality fats and whole grains, not flour grains like breads and crackers, but whole grain rices and quinoa and barley and things like that. Now your body is getting a plethora of nutrients, minerals, fiber, all the things that it needs to repair and rebuild itself. And guess what? You're not hungry anymore. You can make it from meal to meal without wanting that candy bar and the diet soda. You can make it through the evening without needing to hit the ice cream and the popcorn bag, because you're giving your body the things that it needs in order to process, and it's happy. And it says, oh, okay, I'm done.
I told a patient the other day that they said, don't you ever cheat or eat anything? I said, yeah, my wife buys me a Paul Newman organic chocolate bar, 72% chocolate bar. And I said, I'll sit there and I break off a couple pieces of it and have a cup of green tea. And I said, it takes me probably a couple weeks to kill that bar. And they look at me and said, what? How do you do that? It's because before that, a couple hours before, I had a salad and I had vegetables and I had a piece of fish and I'm totally satisfied. This was just a little treat so I could do some work at night.
Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. That's the thing. People don't realize that the processed food industry has gone a long, hard line to hire expensive biochemists to create these addictive chemicals so that you want to keep eating these things. Any food you pick up that you cannot sit there and eat a portion of it that they recommend without wanting to go back to it again and again has addictive chemicals in it, and you don't want to eat that food. I've never heard anybody binge on broccoli.
No, not even a little bit. Well,
not even a little bit.
If you put enough garlic and olive oil on it, then I'm good to go.
Even then, there's a limit to how much of that fibrous food you can put in.
So what's the deal with water? I mean, we tell everybody that they need to drink so much water. And basically the rule of thumb is whatever your body weight is, half of that in ounces per day is what your body craves to flush lymphatic system, to hydrate the system, to get the kidneys to clear and so forth. Where does that all come from? Why is that so critical?
All right. Well, they come up with the 64 ounces basically, and that's not exactly what you just said, but that's what most people hang their hats on, because they assume that most people lose about a quart of water a day in sweat and perspiration and urination. And they take another quart of water a day for all the digestive juices, from saliva to pancreatic juices. So that's where the 64 ounces comes from. Well, they've gotten a little bit more scientific and realized that a 225-pound person is probably going to lose more water through respiration and perspiration than a 125-pound person is. So that's modified a bit as well. But think about your car for a minute. when everything is clean, you've got fresh oil in, you've got a new oil filter, you've got a new air filter, everything is going through, you're putting good grade gas in, your car runs really great, you get good mileage. What happens when you let that oil get thick and sludgy and full of junk, and the air filter isn't processing, and the oil filter is all clogged up with goo? Now the car is sluggish and it doesn't perform very well. Well, when you don't have enough liquid in your body, particularly water, your systems are full of sludge, and your body, instead of trying to use its fuel efficiently for energy and repair work as it's supposed to, now it gets diverted to try to get rid of the sludge. And it can't get rid of the sludge because the lymphatic system is like glue and the blood is thick and the system isn't working very well.
You know, the one thing that I want to throw in there, water is critical, as we all know, and you need to really, and these numbers, by the way, shift upwards a little bit when you're exercising, when you're out in the hot sun, and you're moving more than just kind of sedentary, sitting around playing on your computer.
This is sitting around quiet.
That's right. But the water needs to be either neutral or slightly alkaline. Most water systems are very bad. They're very toxic. They have all kinds of things flowing in. Even if they're filtered out, they can't get everything out, and they have a lot of hormone in it. So somebody would ask the question, so what kind of water should I drink? Well, you want to drink water that has some guarantees to it. You don't want to drink water in plastic bottles that are not BPH free and safe, because now you got another challenge that you're doing. But the easiest way is to get a really good water filter. Aquasana is one that is not super expensive. We use them. We have them in the office. We've actually worked a deal for patients to get them from the supplier. Do they get everything? No, but they get a lot of the junk out. You have things that will alkalize your waters. Some of those work very well. They're very expensive, but you have to make sure that you use them, and you're going to be filling your own water bottles, and those water bottles have to be BPH free as well. So water is not water. There's a good book that came out some years ago, and I'm not completely 100% supportive because I think it's a little excessive, but it says Your Body's Many Cries for Water. Good book. It's worth picking up.
Right. But again, it helps the body keep up with what it needs to do to clean itself and to produce the digestive juices that we need. So it's an important thing. So
let's get into some guidelines for people. How do they begin to do what they need to do? They want to lose this Corona-19 or this COVID-19 that they put on their butt ends as they've been sitting around. What really works? Is there a general look at things that people can follow right now, and then get in to see you or Mary Jane in the office and do some things on an individual basis? You say, I want to do something now. I can't stand the way I look. I want to start changing my life patterns so I can be better than who I am now.
Okay, well, the first thing I ask people to do is to see if they can remember what foods look like for their grandparents. Okay? Because the grandparents didn't have McDonald's and Kentucky Fried and Taco Bell and all those places. In other words, what kinds of foods did our grandparents use? Food, if it's natural food in a vegetable family, it had dirt on it at some point. And the form that you eat it in shouldn't be too much different than the food was when it came out of the garden, except it's no longer got dirt on it and you probably cooked it a little bit. Okay? So that's the first thing. Watch the junk. Go through, take a log and write everything down that you eat for 4 or 5 days. Do it a week if you can, but 4 or 5 days. And you'll be amazed at all the junk that you find that's in there that you completely forget about eating because you eat them just mindlessly. Stop skipping meals. That's a huge one. Everybody thinks, I got to lose weight. I'm not going to eat breakfast. No. Go back and think what I said about the intermittent fasting. You have to get all your calories in during your eating hours. There's no skipping meals. That's just called fasting. And that's not what you want to do when you're trying to get your body back on track. Whether you do Mediterranean or paleo, it depends an awful lot on your body's makeup and your history and your health. Whole30 is probably a pretty decent one. I'm kind of uncomfortable with keto, which is just the modern version of Atkins, because that's a particularly stressful diet for the kidneys, and it was actually designed to deal with specific health issues.
That's right.
Not just weight loss, okay? And a lot of us have some kidney issues, and we're kind of a borderline level, especially if you're over the age of 55. So you want to be a little cautious about things like that are stressing that. Time-restricted feeding, intermittent fasting, we talked about. Everybody can walk for the most part. And if you can't, if you've got bad feet, ankles, knees, whatever, there are a couple of things on the web that you can get called chair exercises, chair dancing. There's all kinds of things like that. You can get a complete workout. I blew out a knee and a shoulder simultaneously a few years ago. So I'm going over to my daughter and saying, okay, what are you going to do with me? I can't use my right shoulder or my left leg. She had a complete workout for me. I never got out of the chair. And I was sweating and I was sore. And I'm thinking, holy crap, there's no excuse for anybody to not exercise.
No, absolutely not. I mean, there's an old program years ago that we presented to corporations and different groups, and it was called Athletes in Industry, but also Athletes in Your Home. And because whether you're moving a vacuum cleaner, you're sweeping the floor, you're bending down, you're pulling things up, you're making the beds, you're whatever it is, you're doing athletic type of exercise.
Yeah.
And you can use your home environment to optimize that. You can do planks against the wall. You can do them on the sofa. You can do them on the staircase.
Yep.
There's so many different things that you can do to upregulate your calorie burn and make your body a whole lot stronger than it is right now.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we had a little problem with one of our toilets on the first floor. So that meant we had to run upstairs to use the bathroom. Wow, what a lot of extra exercise we got that week because we had to run upstairs all the time. It kind of reminded me of when we only had one bathroom in our house when I was growing up, and it was on the second floor. No wonder my mom stayed thin.
So what's the SHAPE program? You use it a lot with your clients and particularly with your
I use it with some people. Yeah, I use it with some people. SHAPE is a homeopathic. It is along a similar line as the former HCG diet, except this one has no hormone. It's using a homeopathic substance that activates your body's release of fat cells and activates your leptin, which is one of your hormones, and your adiponectin, which is another one of the hormones that are both created from the fat cells, that tells your body when you've had enough to eat and also how to utilize that fat when it's been released. It's a good program. It's very difficult if you have a tough schedule to make sure that you get the food that you need when you need to have it. We do have to monitor it because we are manipulating the metabolism pretty well. I got to keep checking with by urine tests to make sure kidneys and liver are up to the weight loss, but it can be used as an anti-inflammatory short term. It can be used to jumpstart some metabolisms that might be a little on the slow side. It's a nice, easy way if you want to take one aspect where it's a little higher level of nutrient, that you can lose your weight gradually, but it just, again, activates as a detoxifier and an anti-inflammatory substance. So it's not for everybody. Certainly it's something that can be discussed at the time when we would meet with someone, but the take-home thing here is there isn't one diet for everybody. There just isn't. I wish there was. My life would be a lot easier, and so would all the people that want to lose weight. But it just doesn't work like that because nobody is exactly like the next person, and what works for one won't work for another, and what works for a man isn't going to work for a woman, and vice versa. So you have to kind of match up what works for that person's lifestyle, their body makeup, their sex, their age, and all those kinds of things.
It's important that people understand the needs of their lifestyle. They understand the needs of their individual metabolism, their genetic makeup, their blood typing, their constitutional types. All of those things go into play, and it changes with the seasons of your life as well. At different times, you need different things. I want to get into the other piece now. We're going to talk about the Asian contribution to weight loss and acupuncture and how it can promote the body to rid itself of fat and to control addiction. And, again, going back to addiction pieces, whether it's alcohol, whether it's heroin, whether it's any other type of drug that we get stuck on, or we get a lifestyle or an emotional addiction. As you said earlier, sugars have the same profound effect on addictive patterning biochemically that cigarettes and heroin and cocaine and other drugs do. They go to the same receptors in the brain.
Exactly. And the same things that will block the receptors in the brain for those drugs also block the receptors for sugar.
There's been interesting studies over years. I've trained in China a couple times. I've gone to Korea and studied with doctors there and seen some of the most profound applications of acupuncture. As you know, and many people know, I'm also licensed in acupuncture. And so it's been an area of interest my entire career. But when it comes to addictive patterns and the body's ability to promote well-being, it's amazing. There's studies have been done where they've taken patients that wanted to lose weight, and they divided them into two different types of groups. And one they did acupuncture on, another one they did a sham acupuncture. And what they saw was, in fact, that the ones that got real acupuncture, and they did a couple sessions a week for several weeks, they in fact lost weight. Their BMI levels and basal metabolism went up high, and they were able to lose body fat stores faster and easier and control their dietary addictive patterns more than somebody else. Just to talk about addiction just for a second, if you sit down and eat something, whether it's something that is good for you or not good for you, and you can't stop eating it, you're allergic to that thing. Mm-hmm. And your body is craving it because of that addictive allergy reaction. And that's one way you can judge that. Acupuncture will stop that. So a lot of you know what acupuncture is. Perhaps you've had some acupuncture done, but they're very, very small, tiny needles, in many cases about the size of a hair. There's tacks. You can use energetics. You can use laser. You can use moxa. There's a lot of different methods to stimulate the movement of what we call qi or energy through the body. And it acts to enhance the body's physical and mental capacities across the board. So you want balance in the system. When there's not balance, when things are aberrant, those systems, whether it's the large intestine, whether it's the liver, whether it's the gallbladder, whether it's the heart, are going to show symptoms. We know that acupuncture has been used to get people off of alcohol, to get people to stop cigarette smoking, and it works really well. But the same addictive pattern is true for food. In Korea and also in China, the ear points are very, very critical. There's actually 5 very specific ear points that are used, and they'll needle them to begin with, and then they'll put tacks in them so the patient can rub the tacks repetitively. And generally a couple treatments a week for 6, 7, 8 weeks, and that combined with dietary patterns, all of a sudden you see tremendous opportunity relative to weight loss that weren't able to be gained before. So acupuncture works. It regulates the hormone cravings, the leptins, the ghrelins. It helps balance that stuff out. It dramatically reduces appetite, so you don't have that chemical craving. Your metabolism takes a step up, but it goes into the brain-body communication, and it begins to say, hey, I don't need as much of that today, or I need a little bit more of this stuff. And your body begins to be self-aware, and it's by balancing that energetics. And we see it all the time. Again, whether it's for weight loss, whether it's for alcohol, whether it's for cigarette smoking, or any of the other addictive patterns, the mechanism is the same. It's exactly the same. And for all the years that we've been using it, we know that it'll stimulate the feel-good patterns of endorphins in the body without having to go to that ice cream cone or that donut in the morning, because that's what you're doing. That sugar is trying to satisfy, that feel-good feeling that we don't have because we refuse to exercise, we don't meditate or prayer or whatever is the best for that individual. But acupuncture works by dampening down that anxiety pattern. It's like, I got to go get something to eat to make me feel better. I have to feel more stuffed, to feel better. So that craving goes away. It'll balance out your sleep patterns. It'll let you go into a deeper sleep. So we don't see cortisol spikes in the middle of the night. Cortisol stays at a much lower level, and then we wake up. Because what happens, why people wake up at nighttime is because cortisol spikes when it's not supposed to. And all of a sudden, both eyes are wide open. You go to sleep, and then all of a sudden, 2 hours later, you're wide awake and you can't get to sleep. But it'll increase your energy and your metabolic capacity, so your cells will actually utilize the stuff that it says it wants. Definitely affecting hormone function. Testosterone level goes up, metabolism goes up, and subsequently you get more muscle mass, as we talked about earlier. Your body starts burning things faster. If we have somebody, and we touched on it lightly, that can't digest properly because the energetics are off, you can balance that out. So when it comes to looking at a weight loss program, one of the best things that we can possibly do is mix two amazingly effective and productive complementary pieces. Good dietary patterns that are based on what the patient has been instructed on their genetic makeup and their metabolic makeup, but using something that will help then regulate the body's energy field. I want to teach everybody something right now. This is something that has gone thousands of years relative to increasing energy and making sure that you dump your stomach and your intestinal tract and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to do it just slightly different. You're going to sit up straight, or you can do this lying down as well. You find your belly button and you find your pubic bone. You put your hand, gentlemen, your right hand, or your left hand is going to be against your stomach. Your right hand is going to go on top of it. Ladies, it's reverse. Your right hand is down and your left hand is on top of it, right between your belly button and your pubic bone. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to massage your tummy clockwise, and you can actually go up from that point around pretty much like your colon flows from the right side up across and then down, and then you're going to back in and center. And you're just going to keep moving that just in a clockwise position, 3 minutes each, once a day. And again, ladies, your right hand is down. Guys, your left hand's on top. Guys, your left hand is down, right hand on top. But the movement is from down right, going up to the rib cage, over to the left, and then down again, and then recentering in the middle, just below your belly button and your pubic bone. This will keep the energetics moving in your intestinal tract. It'll allow you to have better bowel movements. It'll keep things absorbing better. You're actually adding energetics to it. And then you can sit there very quietly. And again, guys, left hand down, right hand on top of the other one, ladies in reverse. And then sit up as straight as you possibly can. And you end it this way. Close your eyes and breathe. And you breathe in through your nose as deeply as you possibly can. And you hold it for a count of 8 or 9 or 10, and then gently blow it out, all the way out. And while you're doing it, I want you to visualize that your lower pelvis is like a cauldron of hot burning coal. And as you breathe in, it's like a bellows that's going to ignite it. You're breathing in, and then you're going to hold it and then slowly let it out. And as you let it out, that hot burning coal, you're going to see the heat just go all the way through your body, curl up to the top of your head, and come way back down again. It's something that will dramatically and effectively increase your energetics and your chi. We've said a lot of stuff tonight, Sue, or today, and we've given them a lot of different details and things that they can do. And just doing the things that we talked about, promise you that you're going to knock off a few pounds. But if you want to do it the right way, if you really want to get this done so you know what you're doing, we're going to offer you a very, very special gift that it's my pleasure to do that, particularly in times that we've got going on now. We want to be here to help you as best we possibly can. we're going to combine in the ability for you to have a joint combination evaluation, an acupuncture evaluation, and a nutritional evaluation in the practice. And it normally would cost you in the neighborhood of about $450 to do both. We're going to give it to you for $194. And all you have to do is give us a call the office at 703-698-7117. Well, we have enough of these appointments because we're going to cut it off at a certain time because we're getting back into the swing of things right now, and we're actually very full. We've been in the office now for quite some time, and actually we've never taken any time off. We've been here, but we're dedicated to making sure you get your body back to where you want it to be, that we optimize your health, that you do the things that you can do to protect yourself moving forward. Now, this $194 doesn't go to our center. It doesn't go to the Roselle Center. It goes to Caring for Others. Caring for Others is a 501c3. It's a Virginia-based foundation that is dedicated to providing scholarships to people who are going to natural health institutes like acupuncture, nutrition, chiropractic, applied kinesiology. It provides health care to those who can't afford anything at all. There's so many of us that have lost jobs today, and a lot of this is going to go to help them as well. It educates people on natural solutions to all kinds of healthcare conditions, and we actually go out and we treat people as well. But no one that's involved in Caring for Others takes 5 cents. Everything is donated. There's no administrative costs. So every nickel that you spend on this examination that goes to Caring for Others will go exactly as it's meant to be. So for $194, you can have something for you that's worth over $450, and you'll get a full examination with Dr. Zhang, who is amazing when it comes to the type of work that we've been talking about. And you'll be able to see Mary Jane Bebenek in the office as well for the nutritional point. And we're always here to serve you. So take advantage of this. Remember, we're only going to offer this to you to be able to do. You can come in anytime you want to, and you can come in 5 months from now. But we're going to only offer this until June the 15th. It's our gift, and why, as you've heard me say 1,000 times on the program, simply because we love you.